So right now we're just north of Charlotte on the Catawba in one of its reservoirs called Mountain Island Lake. This lake is the primary drinking water supply for the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, Gastonia, and Mount Holly. There are 3 coal-fired power plants surrounding Charlotte. Those 3 plants have 4 high-hazard ash ponds that dump their waste into the Catawba River. Coal ash is literally all the coal that doesn't burn, and it's stored in big giant ponds 40 to 80 feet deep right along the banks of the Catawba River. And the water in those ponds is directly discharged, and we can sample that water, and we can sample what's coming out of the pipe discharging water from those ash ponds, and we can find arsenic, we can find chromium, we can find mercury. We know it's poisoning our water. These are toxic metals. It's not something to play around with. These are hazardous waste. They are something that can kill us, yet they're legally discharged every day.
It's extremely frustrating to witness the power that these utility companies have over legislation and policymaking in North Carolina. And it's not just that industry, it's all industries. But it very much puts at risk the public health with weakening rules relating to clean air and clean water. And coal ash is just an example of the problem. Coal ash is toxic. We know the public exposure causes cancer and other diseases. And we have been unable to get beyond the influence of the power companies in terms of adopting regulations and passing legislation that more strictly manages the use of coal ash and disposal of coal ash.
We monitor water quality conditions in these lakes, this lake and the other lakes in the chain, to make sure they're safe and good for drinking water supply. And they are. We have on occasion over the past 3 years, however, found elevated levels of arsenic below the ash basin for the River Bend steam plant. When we did find those 5 exceedances of the water quality standard for arsenic here in Mountain Island Lake, we reported that to the state because they are the agency that permits the discharge from that facility. We questioned them about the violation of the water quality standard, and they indicated to us that it was within the mixing zone. Any discharge from any permitted facility is allowed a mixing zone, and this is where the pollutants mix with the ambient water. Problem is their permit doesn't identify a mixing zone, so it's not real clear where that mixing zone is. And those are some of the things that we've run into when we've reported these findings.
Our research was based on field studies, and we conducted intensive study in North Carolina. And all the results showed that effluents coming from coal ash are enriched in contaminants such as arsenic, selenium, boron, and others. What we found that those contaminants don't go away, and they remain within the system. They usually accumulate within the first 10 centimeters of sediments in lakes and rivers. And as a result, they stay with us. So the problem of contamination is becoming long-term, and the dilution effect has no really mitigation to this problem. So we're talking about a long-term accumulation of contaminants that eventually would affect human health.
These ash ponds have been discharging for decades without regulations, without rules. Really, we don't have any protections. The state of North Carolina doesn't have any limits on arsenic that can be discharged or mercury that can be discharged. And really what we're learning is we're ruining our rivers and we're ruining our water supplies with toxic metals.
I guess my perspective on this issue is that we ought not to be giving these corporations the license to poison our citizens, which is basically what coal ash does. And whether it costs a corporation more to safely regulate it or not, I just think that there ought to be a lot of outrage out there that these corporations can make the case that they shouldn't have to safely contain these toxic chemicals because it's going to cost them more money or their shareholders more money. There are lots of states like ours that have failed to act on the safe management of coal ash waste. So it's a big problem, and if the states are going to be recalcitrant and fail to act, then it's important that the federal government step in to protect the public health.
right now, coal ash is not defined as hazard material in the United States. Because of that lack of definition, the effluents that are derived from coal ash are not being monitored or regulated. As a result, water resources in the United States are being contaminated. So a changing in the definition of coal ash would actually protect the water resources and the environment in the United States, because it will enforce EPA and the local agencies to monitor and to restrict the discharge of those effluent into the environment.